You just mentioned that it was a damning report from Ofsted and Jersey Care. How many damning reports have we seen? It's one damning report after another, with nobody held to account. This is my bugbear. Why is nobody ever held to account? Let me give you an example. After the care inquiry report, 6 health and social services people were suspended from duty as a result of evidence that come out in the care inquiry. They were investigated locally and found with no case to answer and put back to work. Now, 6 out of 6 people had no case to answer. Really? I mean, are we expected to believe that? Isn't that the Jersey way all over again? Let's have an internal inquiry, move them sideways or put them back to work. Why is this still happening? Why aren't people being held to account?
That is a very difficult and tough question. You used the phrase the Jersey way there, and that is the right way to describe it. And I don't blame anybody who feels cynical or despondent about how things have been previously. We have a deep cultural problem in our public service, and that's going to take a lot of time to overcome. The new leadership that have come in, and there's all sorts of controversies with the new leadership that have come in, and I accept people have got different perspectives on that. Charlie Parker and Mark Rogers have come from places that have a very different way of working, and I think have begun implementing some of the practical steps, the practical changes we need in our services so that people are held to account in there, and when people are making mistakes, they're not just kept in that job because it'd be too inconvenient to move them on or get rid of them. Whistleblowing is another one. I know there are changes coming up there, and work that's already been done within the service to improve lines of communication so people will hopefully feel like they can speak out and complain when something goes wrong and know that they're not complaining to the person that they're complaining about and have somewhere that they can go.
Yeah, well, this was. I think I'll be coming on to that in a minute. The whistleblowing thing. So, 8 pledges. Let's get to the pledges that were signed yesterday. I've been through them. Got them there. You got them there. They're pretty to be fair, they're just pretty much basic human rights, aren't they?
Sure.
You're not signing up to anything that any normal human being would sign up to anyway. So what is this going to achieve?
Well, the fact is that some of these things we are pledging are things that we have failed at previously. There aren't get-out clauses in here. We're not signing up to something that we can find a very convenient excuse to ignore later on. So I'll just give one example, pledge number 7, which says, we'll ensure that sufficient funding is available to be effective and that any regulatory and legislative changes needed will be progressed swiftly. Funding. If this pledge had been in place 4 years ago, we'd have been in breach a lot of times over recent years. And this, I know some will say, well, this is something that should go without being said, but it is something we have failed at previously. Another area of it is talking about publishing clear standards and being held to account on that. How often previously has something troubling or inconvenient happened that's just been swept under the carpet instead? It will be very easy for people to look at this and say, well, it's a piece of paper, and what matters is what actually happens as a result of this. What I hope this does is that it sends out a signal alongside the practical things we're going to have to do. So updating our corporate parenting statutory framework, it will go alongside this. But this statement, I hope, will be what we can be held to account for if we get things wrong. And as Children's Minister, I find it very helpful that other ministers have signed this document, because...
But are they all on board?
Yeah, I think they are all on board. And I've noticed just people chipping in with comments and questions that they might not necessarily have done a couple of years ago, who I think are coming round to the fact that this is a top political priority, even if it's not something that has a direct connection to their ministerial portfolio. But what this does, though, is I will be able to say in meetings where all ministers will be bidding for budgets to be able to deliver on X, Y and Z, I will be able to say, well, hang on, I need the funding to be able to deliver this because of the impact it will have on improving our children's services, and you signed up to this too. and having that constantly there to remind people that we've signed up to it, we can't fail on it, for me as a minister will be helpful, but I also hope it will be helpful for the public and backbench states members, where if we bring something to the Assembly that is not in line with these principles, they can really take us to town over it, and I think that will be really important.
Well, I suppose let me put your argument to you in practical terms. So if you go to the Council of Ministers and say, I want X amount of, I don't need a couple of million quid for this, and they say, oh no, we haven't got the money, will you be coming to the States Assembly and saying, well, I'm sorry, the Council of Ministers are in breach of our pledge?
I said at the press conference yesterday that we are already in breach of this pledge, and this might sound strange, but it may well be the case that we're always in breach of this pledge, because this is a high level aspiration here. This is not, as I said, there isn't wriggle room here to get out of this. Having an island and a community which is child focused and provides the best children's services we possibly can is not a journey that we'll ever be finished at. We may come back in 4 years' time and be in a situation where we have outstanding children's services. I hope we are in that situation in 4 years' time. But just because we're there in 4 years' time doesn't mean in 8 years' time we might have slipped back again. So the fact is that this will be an ongoing journey forever. We will never fix this permanently. It will be a constant political consideration to keep this up.
Okay, so with the pledge, I'm yet to be convinced with it. I'll be honest, I'm yet to be convinced.
And it's my job to fight to convince people that this is the right thing to do. This, I think, is not just about a piece of paper or a piece of law. It's a cultural thing. And if people aren't convinced of it, as some won't be, I have to engage with them and say, no, this is why these principles are right. And let's talk about how we apply these principles. And people may well have really useful things to tell me there about what I can do to change what the government is doing, or what other areas of our public service need to know. We will have different perspectives on this, and that is healthy, and it's helpful to be having those discussions, because for too long we've not been having these discussions, and that is as part of what has led us to the situation we've been in.
Okay, so when will the pledge be on? Yesterday you said you're going to put the pledge online so we can see who has and who hasn't signed signed it. When will it be going online? And how often will it be updated? Will it be updated in real time so we can see who signs it and when they sign it? So we've tweeted it yesterday after the first round of signing. So we had a public launch where quite a few of us were there to sign it. It's being brought to the States Assembly building on Tuesday when there's a state sitting, and I'm going to do a statement in the Assembly that responds to the Care Commission report, but also references the pledge, and I'm going to ask members to sign up there. I think we'll give them a bit of chance there to go actually into the room and put pen to paper. So on Tuesday evening we'll republish it again and show online. Yep. And where's that will be on the State's website?
We can put that on the State's website. We can put it on social media as well. I'll be tweeting it too. So we can do that on Tuesday evening. There may well not be every States member in attendance, or not every States member will sign, and we can keep it up to date from that point. Yes, but we'll keep members of the public regularly updated. Yeah.
That's good. So here's my other bugbear, and I've pulled you on this once before, Sam. Will you pledge to abandon the word historic and replace it for the word when we're talking about child abuse? Because as you know, the media, who were heavily criticised by the Care Inquiry for its use of historic when referring to child abuse, will you replace it with the NAPAC suggested term? NAPAC is the National Association for People Abused in Childhood, which is non-recent, which is a lot less offensive to victims and survivors. And if so, will you instruct your staff to do the same? Would you to use the word non-recent and get rid of the word historic, because it demeans what happens and what happened to victims and survivors.
And the word historic also suggests that the consequences are also historic, when the consequences are still felt today, not just by those who went through it, but by people who will be going through it today and who aren't getting the adequate support they need. Yes is the short answer to that. I think that brilliant. And how we frame this has, and this goes back to what I was saying before, that this is a journey, and this is, we are never going to be perfect, and we're not going to fix this forever. This will always have to be a political consideration. And if we talk about things as if, well, that was then and this is now, and there's no chance of that attitude ever creeping back in, then that will show that we don't really understand this. So I think that our language should be inclusive, and it should reflect the fact that we know that this will always be a political priority and not something that we can say, oh, well, we've moved on from then now.
So therefore you will pledge to use the term non-recent rather than historic.
Sure, yeah.
Thanks. So, okay, that's us. Thanks very much for the in-depth interview, Minister, and obviously we'll be keeping a close eye on what's going on. Thank you,
and also thank you for asking these questions and for taking part in the press conference yesterday, because I think those are good opportunities to do this in public. I'm absolutely keen to make sure as much of this as possible is done in public, so everybody's included in this discussion. So thank you for that.
Thanks very much.